What's going on? Welcome to SEC Football Live, brought to you, of course, by ML Rose, 6 great locations in Nashville. That is Trey Wallace. I am Braden Gall. Trey, great to see you, sir. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. We got through, feels like yesterday I was sitting there watching Georgia Tech beat Florida State in Ireland, and all of a sudden, it's the middle of December, Christmas is here, and the playoffs are starting. So it just, wow, it's flown by, dude.
We got games this week. It's going to be great. And not just a shout out to, of course, our great and amazing, awesome sponsor, ML Rose. As I mentioned, 6 great locations. If you are tailgating before Saturday's games and you are in the greater Nashville area, there are, as I said, 6 different locations, craft beer and burgers. They have the SEC sandwich. I don't know what could be more cohesive from an advertising strategy, Trey, than eating an SEC sandwich at ML Rose while waiting to pregame for SEC playoff games on a Saturday in the South in the fall. I love it. I love it.
As somebody who has been to ML Rose a number of times, I would agree with that.
Attaboy. Great beer, great burgers, and according to my wife, the best dipping ranch in the city. So there you go. I don't know what that's worth, but it's worth something. So there you go.
You're on to something, brother.
All right. So we got some SEC teams to talk about. We got some games to talk about. I'm just curious. Texas or Georgia, better chance to win the whole thing?
Texas right now. Just because I haven't seen enough of Gunner Stockton, like that second half in Georgia. If that's going to be the case with Gunner Stockton for the entire postseason, we'll find out. I'm just having to base this on we don't know what the Beck situation is.
Sure.
And, and also, whatever. I mean, Steve Sarkisian was talking about Isaiah Bond is suffering from an ankle injury and he's not practicing this week. And okay, so what does that do? So there's a lot of factors, but right now I just look at Texas. I think, okay, if they can put it all together on offense, then they can be the team. But that could all change. I mean, I just don't know what's going to happen with Georgia. But right now, I'll go with Longhorns.
Does it feel like you've covered this sport long enough where you're around a team, a program, a coach for long enough that like they get close. It feels like, and certainly it helps when you get a draw where you're going to play the 16th and 12th ranked teams in the bracket if you were to win 2 games before you then probably have to face either Oregon or a very good Ohio State team or a very good Tennessee team. It does feel like there's some like serendipity or some karma or something about this Texas team. I can't put my finger on it. I still have questions about Ewers and his ability. Arizona State, by the way, very good at turnover battle. Winning games like that. Texas has a quarterback who's prone to those mistakes. If they don't win it, I think we know why they would win it, right? Elite coaching, talent, et cetera, line of scrimmage, defense, whatever. Right. Is it just Ewers? That's the question about them right now?
I mean, I think it's also we just talked about coaching, but at the same time, it's offensive game plan of when is the right time to put in Arch Manning on certain possessions. And we know how good the Texas defense is. Okay. Like we get that part of it, but I think at the same time, you look at the Texas offense and yeah, I mean, we could sum it up to that part, but we could also say, okay, Quinn Ewers throws 2 interceptions in a game and 1 is a pick 6. And, and then you start to question, okay, was it the right time to put when was the right time to put Arch Manning in on a series and kind of take the pressure off of Quinn Ewers? And so, I think it's back and forth. I think we're going to be able to look at Texas and probably be able to sum it up in 1 or 2 things and not have a laundry list.
It's one of the only point spreads, I believe, of the playoff games where it's gotten bigger. I think Texas opened at 10; it's up to 11.5. So we'll see. I just think Clemson being the worst team in the tournament by ranking, of course, is a part of that. Saturday night, Tennessee and Ohio State, which should be the best game in the first round of the postseason. It's not quite the Spider-Man meme, Trey, where it feels like they're 2 teams with very similar strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. I hate to be reductive and say whichever quarterback sort of plays to the best of his abilities is the team to beat here. If this was a neutral site game, it's probably Ohio State by 3-4 points. If this is in Neyland, it might be a pick 'em. So very similar teams. What is the deciding factor for you when you look at these 2 teams on Saturday night going head to head?
I mean, Tennessee's defensive line against Ohio State's offensive line. I think that's going to be, how much pressure they're going to get to Will Howard. That's my biggest concern. You want to put Will Howard in some very bad spots, and we've seen that. We've seen ability for opposing defenses to put the pressure on Will Howard, and at the same time, okay, it puts pressure on the run game, to be able to come through, and then okay, Jeremiah Smith down the sideline, like, can you get it to him? Like, I can look at the quarterbacks like all day. I think a lot of it's going to have to do with what can they dial up? Can they do the same thing? Here's the problem, like with the whole Michigan game and Ohio State. It's hard to like take that game and look at it as it comes to Ohio State, because Ohio State, they pretty much said, okay, we're going to try to sack up and just run the ball on you.
They were too stubborn.
Right. That was their like I can go back and look at the Ohio State Oregon game and see, okay, like that's the Ohio State offense. But like the Michigan game, they just tried to grab their sack and be like, okay, we're just going to run it down your throat. And it didn't work. So I can't take that offensive game plan
I agree.
As something that they're going to play against Tennessee. But I do think at the same time, Tennessee's defense, that's tough. And so can Will Howard have enough time in the pocket to get the ball downfield? Because I do think Ohio State can take advantage of Tennessee's secondary at some spots. So, looking at it, Braden, like, I think this is a time where you're going to see this thing kind of play out. And I think when it does, we're going to look at both offenses. And look, Nico's played in road games before. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. I'm kind of tired of that narrative. Like, he's played in enough road games. Okay, all right, we know what to expect. But at the same time, I do think at the end of the day, we're going to look at this thing too on that side of the ball, on this side of the ball, and say, okay, which quarterback is hitting the strides down the field? Which quarterback is not leaving their main targets wide open by 15 yards and overthrowing and getting caught up in the pressure. Like, so, I mean, there's so many different storylines in the Saturday night, but I think that one probably hits it.
It is fun that that it is a storyline in a playoff game for the first time ever. Just that it's a thing that we can actually discuss. I think that is a fun part of the game, and frankly, a big time SEC brand like Tennessee, and a big time Ohio. Like, it's sort of what we all thought when we thought about the playoff. It's like, what could we get? And it's this kind of game that we're talking about.
Losing their absolute loving minds over ticket sales. Like, I'm fascinated by that part. Like, I just think, yes, Ohio State fans, there are going to be a shit ton of Tennessee folks in the stands. It's okay. Like, that's okay. Like, you like that from a CFP first round game. Like,
and like Neyland, there's 100,000+ seats in which you could still have 80,000 seats for Ohio State fans.
Yes.
And it still be like the vast majority of them. I do think you're right. Nico's been good on the road, or at least he's comfortable on the road. That's what he says. They certainly lost to Arkansas and Georgia. But what's interesting is the game. So I got a lot of fellow alumni text messages about, oh, look what Michigan did to them. We're going to do this. And I'm like, no, they're in their own heads about Michigan.
Yeah.
They were like, no, we're going to use a game plan that's not good enough. That's not our best, because we want to do it just to spite them, and it backfired on them. And so it's not what's going to happen here. Tennessee is not, outside of one player, I don't think Tennessee can cover the skill players on this Ohio State team. The question is going to be, can Will Howard get them the football? The same question you can ask of Tennessee and Nico Iamaleava, which is, what was the last month of the season more a product of the opponents? Because he played very well against UTEP and Vanderbilt and Mississippi State and Kentucky, played pretty poorly, at least relatively speaking, because of the pressure against Georgia. What type of player is Tennessee going to have at quarterback? Is it the guy who's shown growth and progress against lesser competition? Or is it the guy who struggled most of the first half of the season and obviously against Georgia?
Yeah, I think I know the competition. Like, I look at the competition and I can see it. Okay, that's fine. But at the same time, there are certain plays that he was able to connect on in those games that he was struggling mightily against, before they got into the hard part of the schedule. So I look at it and say, okay, I do see growth out of this position. I do know who the opponent was, and I get that part of it. But at the same time, Nico's comfortable when he's, a 5-step drop and he's hitting Dante Thornton across the middle, or Dante Thornton, trying to hit him down the sideline. Like, look at the Vanderbilt game and look at the touchdowns that they scored on. Like, he's finding space across the middle. It feels like that's what he just loves to do, is try to find the open spots. And I think that to beat Ohio State, you're going to have to hit these guys on the 30-yard downfield strikes down the sideline. Like you
Yeah.
can't be overthrowing them by 10 yards and 15 yards. And I think, so I look at the comfortableness of what he was able to do, I think, over the last, 4 games of the season, even the Georgia game. Like there were times during the Georgia game that I thought he played well. And then I thought he kind of sunk back into that.
Didn't have a lot of time to throw the football there.
Right, he didn't have a lot of time. So I think this is a spot where you get to Nico and you think, okay, is this guy going to be able to go up there and lead? And I think first off, make sure it's Dylan Sampson's game and then it's Nico's game. Let Dylan Sampson get his.
What's fascinating is I think both secondaries have one good player. I think Ohio State's. I think Caleb Downs is the best player, maybe on defense in the entire country. So you're going to have to scheme around him. But if you are going down the field, to your point, that's where maybe he's going to be good at taking away those deep dig routes that Nico's comfortable throwing. But Igbinosun is one of the most penalized defensive backs in the entire country. You can go if they give you man-to-man coverage on the outside. Tennessee should be able to attack some of those defensive backs, which leads us because again, Ohio State front seven just as good as Tennessee's, if not a little bit better. Yeah. So the question I have is we like to take big games like these and turn them into these referendums on stuff. Ole Miss is going all in to buy the playoff thing. There's a referendum on that, which means it wasn't the right strategy because they lost to Kentucky. Okay, fine, maybe we could do that, but maybe there's other things at play. I think there's a large conversation to be had about the Heupel offense, which has over time, no matter who's coaching it, is had a tough time sort of leveling the talent gap between someone that's better than them, and sort of overcoming that slight talent gap, and then beating that team because the system's great at beating everybody consistently that is quote unquote worse than you or less talented than you, but it's not really been in one of these. I don't know who's on that same coaching tree that's won a championship. It's not Tebow or Gus with Cam Newton. Maybe Urban Meyer is in that similar sort of offense, but it hasn't been one like Heupel's. Do you think, and we could say the same thing about Sarkisian, Kirby Smart's offensive development, Carson Beck, there's lots of other referendums that are going to happen in the playoffs. Is that making too much of this Heupel opportunity to be the team that has more talent, or am I making too much of a non-story?
I don't think you're making too much of it because everybody looks at Tennessee and they go back and think of Hendon Hooker in this offense and Jalen Hyatt and down the field. And they look at the 5 touchdowns against Alabama for Jalen Hyatt. And they look at the last, it's almost if they look at that game and they think that's what Heupel's offense should like every single time they touch the field. No matter who the quarterback is. That was Josh, it was Josh Heupel's biggest moment at the time. It was also Josh Heupel's worst moment in a situation that everybody is going to be referencing. That's what the offense should look like every single game. So I and not a shot at Heupel, it's just honesty here. I think that when you look at what they are trying to do, is it as fast paced as we've seen in years past? No, it's not. But at the same time, I also think a lot of it has to do with Nico. I think they're continuing to try to bring him along. I think they're in a spot where in a perfect world where they were not paying Nico an absorbent amount of money to be the quarterback for Tennessee, it would have been great if Tennessee had a transfer quarterback, I think, this season that knew how to run a system like this, that could go out there and take the pressure off Nico. Maybe I've heard it from a couple of different people in the NFL spot where maybe he would have been better if there was another year of really learning, but at the same time, you got to get this kid into the fire and let him go.
They're in the playoff, Trey.
Right, they're in the playoff. That's what I'm getting at. So it's like
he did his job.
Right, he did his job. It's who are you looking at here? So I think with folks, you have to understand that Heupel's working his way around every single quarterback that he has with this system. And so I think with the Nico thing, it's okay, they want to go, they go 90 miles per hour on one series, and then they're going 60 on the next series. And I just think it's different. And I think folks are having to kind of wrap their heads around it again, because you go back to that year where Hendon, where everything was like this. So I think at the same time, I think Nico can be the guy that goes and leads him to the semifinal. I'm not going to say national championship right now, but I think Nico can go into Ohio State and win that game on Saturday, because also he's got one of the best running backs in the country right behind him.
Yep.
And he's got an offensive line that's, I know at times has looked shaky this year, but when it comes to running the football, they know how to do it. Pass protection, completely different subject, but running the football, they can run the football. So that's where I think they have got to alleviate the pressure on Nico Saturday.
I honestly think Heupel in the offense has matured a lot over the last season and a half. Let's say it felt like it started around the A&M game last year, where it was clear he didn't trust Milton to run the offense, and so they leaned on the three-headed monster, and they've kind of been leaning on that ever since, which I think will bode well for them. If I actually think this could be a very low-scoring, physical. It's people are going to be tentative and sensitive. They're going to protect their quarterbacks, both sides of the offense, and try to be conservative about it early. And I think it's going to get crazy in the third quarter. Is what I think is going to happen. Yes. I would take Texas pretty large over Clemson. I think I would take Ohio State close. I don't know what that says about Heupel, Tennessee, Nico. People are going to make these big grand sweep. If they were to lose a close game, people are going to make these big grand sweeping, commentaries about all these different pieces of this Tennessee puzzle. I still think it's an extraordinary season, a big step forward, and they got a lot of people coming back next year. So we'll see. You got a final pick on the Tennessee game for me? Not that I care about predictions, but whatever.
I know. I think Ohio State wins this somewhere around 27-23.
Yeah. Okay.
27-24. Again, it goes back to that Georgia game where Tennessee started out hot. Tennessee has to continue doing something like that, where they let Georgia back into that game. Tennessee coming up 14-0. Who knows what could have happened from there? I think it's a good game, and I think it comes down to the fourth quarter. Like you said, it's going to get batshit crazy at some point in the second half, and I'm excited about it.
Well, Georgia's fascinating to me because we still had the same. It's similar conversation to that of Tennessee's offense, where we're just looking at this, and Georgia fans get very sensitive about this. They don't want to talk about the offense not being imaginative, but it's felt like a very odd team to pinpoint this year, where at times they look extraordinary. I thought the SEC championship game felt like a national title game. It felt the physicality from both Texas and Georgia was extraordinary. I'm not sure how many teams can play like that routinely, at least not deep into the tournament. I think Georgia is, the biggest beneficiary of the time off of anybody in the thing, not just Carson Beck, but for a variety of other reasons. Here's my thing. I think Kirby's going to do something different. And this is where Nick Saban was great. He had the time off to put something in place that no one was expecting. And I feel like that's where Kirby might be able to win a national title, because he's just the best coach in the game right now. And I'm not sure the offense matters in the first couple of games. Notre Dame could be a really great game, but I don't know. Who are they playing, and what do you make of Georgia's scheme?
I think Indiana will put up a fight against Notre Dame. I think that'll be a fun little matchup. I do think, and nothing against Indiana, but I think Notre Dame will run away with that one in the second half. And when I say run away, I don't mean by winning by 20 points, but take care. Georgia's offense has been stagnant at times. Here's how I have phrased it the same damn way every game this season. You're getting the Carson Beck first half versus the Georgia second half. And when Carson Beck has a bad first, we saw it against Ole Miss. We saw it against Texas. We saw it against Ole Miss. We saw it against, we saw it again against Texas. We saw it against Bama. So I'm just, and I don't know if Carson Beck is going to be the guy, but what I'm getting at is Georgia likes to dig themselves a nice little shallow hole, and then they like to just jump out of it and run at you. I think at the same time of what we're getting at with Kirby Smart and this offense, I think I agree with you here in the situation where you're giving them time to figure out, okay, how do we take advantage of the weapons we have in the backfield and also down the field? And is Carson Beck compared to Gunnar Stockton? We're going to find out a lot in that first game. If they make it past the first game, we're going to find out a lot. Because if Gunnar Stockton is playing, and I'll even throw this back at you here. If Gunnar Stockton's playing and they beat Notre Dame and they look good in the process, but Carson Beck is healthy enough to come back and play in that second game, is Kirby sticking with Gunnar, or is he going back to Carson?
All right, here's what I think happens. It's not what I think happens, but I think it could happen. Because I was curious, that offense was far more efficient, productive, and good at football when Gunnar Stockton was running it. Some of that is the emotion of the moment in the second half against Texas. He put his shoulder down on like a short 3 or 4 yard run, and like the sideline exploded, and they rallied around him, and like those are one of those like galvanizing moments where it's just something special about sports, where a guy just, it's like, ironically, it's the Rudy story, right? Like for Notre Dame. Although I have a bunch of Indiana fans in Nashville that are telling me that Rudy is offsides.
He was offsides.
He was offsides. But I think what could happen is, Stockton wins them a game or two and then gets into the championship game, and they're playing a national title team, Oregon or Ohio State or Texas, again for a third time. I really do think it's Georgia, Texas for a third time. I do. And I know it's kind of boring, but kind of exciting all at the same time. I think Beck, there's some sort of hero quarterback change that happens. Like it's the opposite. Like Stockton's still starting because Beck's not fully healthy yet, but he's ready enough to play. And they're struggling in the first half, and they go full Tua at halftime, and Carson Beck comes in and wins them a championship in the final half. I mean, again, that's the storybook stuff we root for as sports fans, not as like Georgia fans or Tennessee fans or Texas fans. But
no, I don't disagree with you, and we've seen this happen. It's not like this would be something new. If he's healthy enough, like you remember, he couldn't grip a football at halftime of the SEC title game, and it's very. It gets interesting from an injury standpoint when a university puts out a statement that says the family is going over their options. That means, folks out there listening, Georgia has done everything and said everything to the family about his injury that they can and medically can do. But now it's up to his family to go get second opinions on his elbow, and if this is going to hurt him going forward, can he play?
Yeah.
What I'm getting at is that
he's going to play. He's going to play again for Georgia this year.
I think he's going to play again for Georgia this year, and I think we're going to see him again this year.
Yeah.
I'm curious when that is. And so,
what if the national championship game features two starting quarterbacks, Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck, and then in the second half, because the offenses are so bad, it's Arch Manning versus Gunnar Stockton.
A look at the future. Part 1. Here you go. This is what this rivalry is going to look like. Yes.
two polar opposite personalities too. Arch Manning, like all swag, all showmanship, all the big last name, and then Gunnar Stockton, Gunnar Stockton's just like, I'm just here to hand the football off and here to hang out.
I'm gonna run the ball 5 yards and put my head into somebody, and hopefully I don't get a concussion.
Penn State SMU. Any thoughts on Penn State SMU? I know this is an SEC show, but
I think it's going to be a good game. Like I do at first. I think it's going to be I watch Penn State's offense, against Ohio State. And I'm not trying to compare SMU's defense to Ohio State. Please do not put me in that category.
Yeah.
But I have seen Penn State fall apart on offense by their own doing. Yeah. I was at that Penn State-Ohio State game. I sat there and watched Ohio State, just stop Penn State and not let Drew Aller get comfortable. I mean, can SMU do that? Can SMU score some points against Penn State's defense? Sure they can. But at the end of the day, it just feels like Penn State's got enough weapons to be able to make SMU kind of pay in certain situations. So, I think it'll be a good game. I don't think it's going to be some – Penn State's going to teach the new ACC member a lesson, type of game. But
not as long as James Franklin's coaching. So
no. So God, if he loses that game,
yikes, dude.
Can you imagine? Like you thought Ryan Day was the one on the hot seat in the Big Ten?
I never understood that. I never understood. It's so funny you bring that up. I never understood like the hatred for Ryan Day. I get why Ohio State fans are frustrated with him. But it's like Ryan Day is 10 times the coach that James Franklin is. Like it's not even close.
I made this point to somebody in Ohio on a interview with somebody in Ohio. I was like, okay, I live in a town that a team lost 15 consecutive games to Alabama, and they weren't running out their coach because they lost to Alabama. I try to make that
because he didn't know what because he didn't know what asparagus was.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's like, well, yes, and
his pants never fit properly.
Right, and the other one wanted to talk about World War II and
right.
bathing habits and all that shit. God bless Butch Jones. I don't even need to go down.
All of them.
So I'm just saying that I think that they're hell bent on that Michigan game, and I understand it. Trust me, I get it. But at the end of the day, if he goes out and wins you a national championship, there's still going to be the people. Well, he lost to Michigan.
Right. Oh no, there is a percentage of Ohio State fans that are rooting against Ohio State. It's not a lot. It's not a lot.
Seen how many tickets are on sale for this game Saturday?
Yeah.
It's not just brokers, folks.
Yep.
It's Ohio State fans.
Let me take you to the end of this whole thing. No idea what's going to happen. You got 3 SEC teams, probably fewer than we expected, but I'm okay with what the committee did. What is the story? What is the SEC headline? What is the story at the end of it? Is it 2 SEC teams battle for championship? Is it all 3 of them are out and we've got a Penn State, Oregon, or a Notre Dame, Arizona State? Like what is the actual headline about the conference's performance that Greg Sankey is thinking through the morning after the national championship game?
I think it's more or less Texas. I for some reason I'm hooked on Texas right now. No pun intended.
I see what you did there. Yeah.
Texas makes statement in first year in the SEC and wins title.
Okay.
Heads up everybody else in the conference. I think that could be the headline coming. And I look at the matchups. I look at the matchups and how this thing could play out. I think Georgia right now is in a spot where there's a little bit of unknown, obviously, heading into their first game in the Sugar Bowl. I think at the same time with Tennessee, like it would be if Tennessee were to beat Ohio State on Saturday and go to the Rose Bowl and play Oregon.
That'd be awesome.
I mean,
that'd be great.
You talk about something for college football.
Aesthetically pleasing to the eye as football gets in college. It's just that'd be great. Uniforms, the setting, the whole deal. Yeah.
And by the way, folks, they both get 25,000 tickets, so there won't be something.
Which, by the way, congratulations, Oregon, on the best season of anyone in college football. And you know what your reward is? A neutral site game against 2 top 5 teams.
Exactly. Congratulations.
Way to go.
Good luck to you, Dylan Gabriel. Greg Sankey's going to get his no matter what down the road. We know that. We're going to get an expanded playoff.
Yeah.
We're going to get more teams in the future. I think this one could center around, Texas winning a title in their first year, or, Georgia seemingly coming back from the dead after getting destroyed by Ole Miss and Oxford and winning a title.
Imagine the headlines if Tennessee beats Ohio State and then it's a Texas-Georgia national championship game after the sort of like, oh, the SEC didn't get enough in the tournament. It would be I think they're guaranteed one spot in the championship. I think either Texas or Georgia is going to get there. I think Georgia's got the path based on like the coaching. James Franklin is my concern on the one side, and Notre Dame's overall talent is the concern on the other. And I think Georgia's path is easy. I think Texas's path is easier as well. Ohio State, Tennessee, and Oregon are all awesome teams, but only one of them can come out of there. So right. I think you're going to get at least one SEC team in the final. So we'll see, maybe 2. I think the SEC is going to have a good tournament, even if Tennessee gets beat on Saturday night. I think they have a good tournament. So
I agree. They're going to go back, and one of them's going to play in a spot that they've already played in twice this season.
Now,
Atlanta.
If Notre Dame and Penn State are playing in a semifinal, Tennessee loses to Ohio State, and Texas somehow, Quinn Ewers throws 3 interceptions against Arizona State, all of a sudden we're having a very different conversation about Greg Sankey.
Are people sleeping on Arizona State?
Yes.
CFB?
Yes. I think so. Now, it's because their formula is chaotic.
I get it. I know.
They've got a young quarterback who likes to fly around. They got a super talented running back who doesn't like knee pads. And they've got a defense that lives off turnovers. And you go up against the Texas team that on a good day, Texas wins that game like 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
But if Quinn Ewers has a bad day, which he's prone to do, a team that capitalizes on turnovers is going to live for that kind of thing. So I think the Arizona State Texas game is closer than people think. I still think Texas is my pick to win the whole thing, but we'll see.
Don't disagree.
Trey, where can people find you, read you, catch all your work, promote all of your stuff, man? And also, ML Rose is great too.
Actually, first off, go eat at ML Rose. Go drink beer. Go get your ranch dip before the game's on Saturday. And then follow me at Trey Wallace _ on X, Twitter, whatever you would call it. You can do the same thing on Threads, Bluesky, whatever else place that you find content. Follow all my work at outkick.com, and we're just chugging along, waiting to. I'm gonna go get my parka and my toboggan and my snowshoes and get ready to go to Columbus on Friday. So
maybe I'll just buy some tickets and drive up there.
Dude, they're $200 right now.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
$200.
All right. Well, thank you, man, for hanging out. Good to see your face. Catch all of his work. Read, subscribe, rate, review, thumbs up, notifications on. You guys know the drill. Do all that stuff. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. For Trey, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. Go to MO Rose, everybody. Have a good one. Playoff football is here in the SEC. It's going to be great. Thanks, Trey.
Thanks, bud.